You're listening to the weekly Parsha podcast recorded with Hashem's never-ending assistance in Ramah B'Shem Israel 5775 2015. This week's Parsha is Parsha's Korach, and I'd like to share with you a thought that I actually heard recently at a Sheva Brachas, and combine it with kind of a cute thing that I actually said at this Sheva Brachas, and I think there's a very deep, important lesson. As always, as we study the ideas of the Torah and the Parsha, there's so much that we can bring into our lives. Torah tells us that Korach had a group of people. He gathered 250 people together with him to fight against Moshe, to make a claim for the Kahuna Gedola, to be the high priest. He said that he deserved it instead of Aaron HaKohen, instead of Aaron the high priest. And as a result of this, we all know the story. Korach, he fights against Moshe. His 250 people who are with him, they all are burned alive by this Eish that comes out, this fire that comes out from heaven. And Korach and his family and all of his rechush, all of his possessions, they all go down into, there's an earthquake, the earth splits open, they fall down into hell, to Gehenna, and the story ends, not really, it doesn't really end there exactly, but for our purposes it ends there. Now, the Medrash points out, the Torah tells us that there was a very chashuv, a very important person. His name was ben Peles. And ben Peles was one of the people who had come along with Dasan and Aviram and Korach. They had all come to fight against Moshe, to rebel, and to try to claim the Kahuna Gedola, to claim that Moshe was using nepotism, heaven forbid, etc. So this person, ben Peles, is mentioned at the beginning of the Parsha, but On is not mentioned later in the Parsha. And the Medrash points out that he's not mentioned, and there's a good reason why he's not mentioned, because he didn't end up being part of the rebellion. Now, what was the reason that he wasn't part of the rebellion? The Medrash tells us that ben Peles had a very wise wife. The verse says, "Mishlei chochmos isha bansabesa," the wisdom of women has the power to build a home. Says the Medrash, this is a reference to ben Peles' wife. What was the greatness of this woman? What did she do? What did she say? So ben Peles came home and told his wife all about that which was going on with Korach and the rebellion, and Moshe had called them the following day to a challenge, to a face-off, so to speak. And ben Peles' wife says to him, look, let's be honest here. If Aaron HaKohen is the one who's chosen by God to be the Kohen Gadol, to be the priest, you're not going to be any different. You're not going to be higher up. If Korach is chosen by God to be the high priest, you're also not going to be any different. You're going to be the same person. You're going to have the same position of power. So don't get involved in this machlekes. Don't get involved in this argument. What does his wife do? The Medrash tells us his wife gives him some wine to drink, gives him some whatever she does to get him to fall asleep, so that when they come knocking on his door, that he's out. He's out completely. Not only that, interestingly, says the Medrash, the wife of ben Peles actually uncovers her hair. Torah obligates a married woman, to cover her hair. She uncovered her hair and she stood at the door of their house. And this way, anyone who would come to try to get On to join forces, they would be turned away. They wouldn't want to look because their hair was uncovered. They felt uncomfortable, so they would leave. So ben Peles' wife used her chachma, used her wisdom, in order to keep the construction of her home alive. And as a result of that, ben Peles was saved. He wasn't amongst those who were destroyed and killed in the rebellion of Korach, and he survives. Now the Medrash points out that this was true of ben Peles' wife. Chochmas isha bansabesa. This was a woman who, through her wisdom, was able to keep the construction of her home alive. But there was another woman, another wife. Actually, the Medrash in Mishlei mentions more than one wife, but we'll focus for a moment on Korach's wife. Korach's wife was the one who actually instigated the entire story. She was the one who, the Medrash tells us that Korach came with a talis, with a talit that was all blue wool. It was all blue, tcheles. And he asked Moshe Rabbeinu, is there a necessity to place strings of tcheles, to place the blue strings on the corners of this garment if the entire garment is blue? So where did he get this blue garment? He got it from his wife. His wife made the garment. Korach's wife was someone who encouraged him to rebel against Moshe. She was standing behind him and she was encouraging him to do that which was wrong. And as a result of that, she and her husband and her family and all their children, all their possessions were destroyed. And they're remembered in a negative light for all times, for all generations. Now, if we look at these two stories, it seems like Korach's wife was a better wife. It seems like they had a better marriage. She was encouraging him to be great, to be all that he could be, to be the Kohen Gadol, to be the high priest. And yet, the result of her encouragement was destruction. And Peles, he comes in, and his wife doesn't sound to be very encouraging. She's like, "You're a schnook. You're not going to be anything greater if Korach is the high priest, or if Aaron is the high priest. Yeah, just acknowledge who you are and be honest, and don't get involved in the arguments." So she stands up against him. It's very interesting that the Torah refers to as the Chochmas Isha Ban Sabesa. That's the epitome of a proper marriage, is the wife who knows how to say to her husband, "This is not the right move. This is not the thing for you. Don't get involved." Stands up to her husband and helps him out so that he doesn't have to be involved in this machlokes, in this argument. So this was the idea that I heard at this Shabbat Brachas, and I wanted to also share with you just a cute thing that I said at the Shabbat Brachas, that it was really sweet. They gave out books, random books, to each of the people who were sitting at the table, and they wanted each person to give a blessing, take a line from each of these books, and give a blessing to the couple, to the chassan and kala, to the bride and the groom who had just gotten married. And the book that I got was a children's book, which had about 3 lines on each page. And the book read that there was a person, a kid or something, who asked the zoo to send him a pet. First they sent him an elephant, and the elephant wasn't good, so he said, "No, it's too big," and he sent it back. And then they sent him a giraffe. It wasn't good, it was too big, sent it back. They sent him a lion, it was too fierce, so they sent it back. Etc., etc., a whole bunch of different animals, and at the very end of the story, so they send him a puppy. And the puppy was perfect, so he kept him. So I actually, in giving the blessing, I read the whole book, which took about 1 minute, and the thought that I shared with them is that, when a person gets married, of course, at the beginning, everything is flowery and everything is wonderful, and you see all the beautiful, wonderful traits of the other person. But sometimes, as your marriage progresses, as you go through the years, there'll be times where they're too big or they're too fierce, whatever it is, and you want to send them back. But if you stick it out and you read through the whole book and you get to the end and you stick it out with your partner, with your spouse, so in the end, if you really are committed to your relationship, you will realize, despite all of the foibles, the human foibles that a person might have, this person Hashem chose and is perfect for you. They're exactly who you need. And you realize that this person is a keeper. And I think that this story, this idea, is connected to the story of Onan and Peles and Korach. And I'll explain how. Because a person, when I look at things in the moment, when I'm stuck in this moment, it's very easy for me to get caught up in the anger of the moment, the emotions of the moment, or even to be caught up in my own constricted thinking, which isn't as broad and as expansive as it could be. Now, when a person is inside, they're in a relationship with a spouse, so their spouse might do something wrong, or I might do something wrong to my spouse, and in that moment, so things are very constricted and things are very tough and challenging. To be able to expand past that is something which requires a commitment. It requires a commitment to the relationship. I said at the moment when I got married that I gave my wife a ksuva, a document which says in it that I am committed to you. I'm committed. I'm going to value you. I'm going to work for you, do whatever you need. I'm going to give you livelihood. That commitment that I made at the moment of inspiration, when the relationship was fresh and the love was palpable, that commitment helps me. That broad vision, that expansive vision of knowing that I have a commitment, I'm going to keep that commitment no matter what may come what may. The relationship is paramount, and even though in this moment it might seem challenged, it might seem difficult, it might seem like I made a mistake, but if I stick it out and I remain committed and recognize that no, this is the person that Hashem chose for me, so that commitment, that broader picture, is what helps me hold on to it, and then in the end realize that indeed this person is exactly who I need. And Onan Peles, the wife of Onan Peles, if we contrast her vision, and we contrast Korach's wife's vision, Korach's wife couldn't see the broader picture. She was stuck in the moment. She was stuck in the anger of the moment. Hey, how could it be? The Medrash talks about what motivated her to convince her husband to fight against Moshe. But she was caught up in the anger of the moment. He did something to dishonor you. And as a result of that, she said, no, you have to fight and you have to get your honor back. She couldn't see the broader picture. She couldn't see that Moshe Rabbeinu was indeed the Goyal. He was the Redeemer of the Jewish people. He was a Navi. He was a prophet. Aaron HaKohen, Aaron was also a prophet. These were people who had a broad vision, and she, in her limited view, in her limited vision, was stuck inside of that anger, inside of that emotion. Peles' wife, she was able to look at things from a broader picture and say, yeah, there's the anger of the moment. There's who's right. There's the principle of it. And her husband was caught up with Korach, and it was a beautiful idea that Korach was saying, Kol ha'am kulam kedoshim, the entire Jewish people, everyone is equally holy. Everyone is great. Everyone has their own special thing that they give to the Jewish people. Why? Why are you, Moshe and Aaron? Why are you making yourselves above the Jewish people? That was what he was saying, and there was a lot of truth to that. That there is, in a certain sense, every single person has a holy, deep relationship with Hashem. That no one else can touch. That no one is greater than anyone else from that perspective. But the mistake was, and On's wife saw that. The mistake was that that's not always true. There are places where there is a higher and a lower. And that's what Peles' wife says to him. Whether it's Korach who's going to be the Kohen Gadol, going to be the high priest, or whether it's Aaron, you will remain where you are. It's not going to make any difference. In other words, within the statement of Korach that there's no hierarchy is a statement that he wants to be on top. And either way, you're going to be the same. You're going to be in the lower echelons, so to speak. And therefore, says Peles' wife, she was able to see the larger picture that, hey, don't get involved. It's not necessary to get involved. I don't have to be caught up and stuck in the anger of this moment, in the emotion of the moment, in trying to prove that indeed we're all equal and that there shouldn't be any hierarchy. That's true. It's nice, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work out in the end. She was able to see that broader picture. So the lesson for me that this drives home, the lesson that I take back with me, I hope that you might also take with you, is that it's so important all the time to, it's so easy to get caught up in the emotion of the moment. It's so easy to get caught up in anger or in sadness or whatever it is. And the lesson that we learn from Peles' wife, and that we learn when we speak about relationships, is that when there's a commitment, when there's a higher vision, when someone has the ability to step out of the moment and pause, if a person can do that so they have a chance to maintain the commitment that they have to the relationship, the commitment itself gives a person a chance to do that. If I'm committed no matter what, come what may, if I'm committed, so that's going to keep me and hold me, and I'm going to be able to get through the difficult moments. This too shall pass. Gam ze yavor, that if I focus on the fact that, this is how I feel now, but there's a much greater vision that I can have for myself. There's a much greater vision for this relationship. There's a much greater vision, whether it's between myself and my spouse, or it's between me and God. Sometimes I have anger towards God. I've done something that places me in a place of separation from Hashem. Or sometimes I feel like God is separating himself from me. God is judging me. Sometimes I have that feeling. And the idea here is that focusing on the fact that no, there's a love that Hashem has for me. There's a love that I have for my spouse, for my children, for those around me. That relationship is paramount. By focusing on that, by focusing on the broader picture, and remembering it, it's hard to remember it when one's in constriction, one's inside that moment of anger or emotion. But to remember that, to take it to heart, and to pause and say, this is going to pass. I'm going to get through this. I'm going to get to the other side, and remember that's going to happen. So by focusing in on that way, so we have an opportunity to indeed be able to hold on to that broader picture and be able to draw it down into where we are. When we're in constriction, so it's hard to see the broader picture, but we can pause and we can let go of the emotions. We can stop and we can remember who we really are, what we really want, and what our commitments are. I want to bless you, and please bless me back. Hashem should help us to indeed be able to have that broader vision, to be able to do what it takes, as Omer Peles' wife did, to be able to do what it takes to hold on to our commitments, to hold on to what we know to be true, even at the times when it seems like it's not so easy to do that. Hashem should help us to be able to hold on to that. And Hashem should help us in all of our relationships, with those around us, with our spouses, with our children, with Hashem. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful Shabbos. This podcast was made possible through the gracious donations of listeners like you. For more podcasts like this, please visit www.arigoldwag.com or search on iTunes Ari Goldwag.